She was a baker, but not an ordinary one. Madame Janet was a witch in an apron, who smiled sweetly by day and cursed by night. She urinated into her batter and destroyed business for other women. But one day everything changed. A town where cockfights filled the air with noise, her story began to unfold. The town of Oluma was a place of laughter, dance, and bright colors. Families woke every morning to the sound of roosters and the smell of fresh bread. Children played in the dusty streets, chasing after chickens and laughing with pure joy. Women sold fruits in baskets, men carried palm wine from the farms, and neighbors trusted each other like brothers and sisters. Life was simple and beautiful. Madame Janet came into this peaceful town like honey in the mouth. She wore an apron that was always neat, and her bakery smelled like heaven. Cakes of different colors lined her window. Red velvet with shining cream, golden butter cakes, soft chocolate rolls, and meat pies that melted in the mouth. Nobody suspected what lay behind that smile. Every evening when the sun went down, Madame Janet's bakery closed. Her lantern glowed faintly through the window, but nobody dared to knock. By day she gave cakes, but by night she whispered curses. She would open her pot of strange herbs, mix powders into water, and chant words that crawled into the bones. She would laugh softly, calling names of other women who sold food in the market. "Let your soup spoil. Let your bread burn. Let your stew smell rotten," she said, cursing them until her eyes glowed red. And in the darkness, she poured her urine into the mixing bowl, stirred it into her flour and whispered, "Eat, eat, and let your joy turn bitter." Still nobody knew. To the town, she was their beloved baker, their mother of sweets. One morning, Madame Janet arrived with a tray of cakes balanced on her head. She smiled like sunlight, her wrapper bright, her steps graceful. "Cakes for winners, cakes for fighters, cakes for children," she sang. The crowd rushed. People bought, people laughed, people chewed. The roosters fought until blood stained their feathers, and the men roared louder, stuffing cakes into their mouths. Nobody noticed Madame Janet's eyes flicker dark for a moment. Nobody saw how her fingers trembled as if she controlled the fight itself. That night, strange things began. A woman named Mama Nkechi, who sold akara by the roadside, suddenly found her beans sour. No matter how she washed, no matter how she fried, the taste was bitter. People stopped buying from her. Another woman, Ijeoma, who baked bread in her mud oven, saw her loaves collapse like wet sand. Customers turned to Madame Janet saying, "Her cakes never fail. She is truly blessed." And Janet smiled, nodding humbly, while inside her chest she laughed like a snake. Days passed, and more women lost their business. Some cried in the night. Some accused each other. Friendships broke, trust cracked, but everyone still went to Madame Janet's bakery. She grew richer, fatter, her cheeks round, her rings golden. She threw coins to children and gave pies to priests. People praised her. "She is the mother of Oluma. May her bakery never close." But little by little, darkness crept. A boy named Fola was the first to notice. He was only 12, skinny, with eyes too sharp for his age. He loved cakes, but one evening after eating a slice of Madame Janet's red velvet, he woke with a strange dream. He saw the baker standing in the forest, stirring a bowl not with sugar, but with her own urine. He saw her shadow stretch long like a demon, her apron stained, her face smiling. He woke with sweat, his chest heavy, his heart beating like a drum. First he said nothing. "It was only a dream," he told himself. But the dream came again and again. One night, unable to hold it, he told his sister Ada, who was 10. She frowned, hugging her knees. "If it is true, then why do people still smile after her cakes?" she asked. Fola had no answer. Yet his eyes told him the truth. Something was wrong. At the same time, the cockfights continued. The town laughed, and Madame Janet baked. But Fola began to watch her. He noticed how cats avoided her bakery, how birds flew away when she passed. He saw how her shadow sometimes moved before her feet, stretching too long in the evening sun. And he began to fear. The day came when something happened that no one could explain. A little girl named Aoife, only 7 years old, ate a meat pie from Madame Janet's tray. She laughed, she played, she danced in the street. But when night came, she fell sick. Her stomach twisted, her voice cried, her eyes rolled white. Her parents rushed her to the healer, who gave her herbs, but nothing worked. "This sickness is strange," the healer whispered. "It is not of the body. It is of the spirit." The town shook with fear. But still, nobody suspected Madame Janet. They said, "Maybe the girl ate too much." They prayed, they wept, but they still bought cakes the next morning. Fola, however, did not sleep. He stood at his window that night, staring at the glow from Madame Janet's bakery. He saw her shadow dancing like flames, heard her laugh drift into the night. His hands clenched. His chest burned. "She is no ordinary baker," he whispered. "She is a witch." And in his heart, he knew the town was in danger. The sickness of little Aoife was only the beginning. At first, people thought it was just a child's weak stomach, but soon others began to fall ill. A strong farmer named Okoro ate 2 slices of Madame Janet's buttercake at a festival. That night, he felt his bones twist as if fire lived inside him. He could not hold his cutlass again. His farm dried up because he had no strength to clear weeds. People whispered that maybe the gods were angry. But even while Okoro lay on his mat, groaning, his wife still bought meat pies from Madame Janet the next morning. "Her cakes are sweet, they cannot harm us," she said. But harm was growing. Day by day, small fights began to spring up in the town. Husbands shouted at wives, friends accused each other, neighbors quarreled over little things. Once loving families broke apart like clay pots on stone. The laughter of Oluma began to sound weaker, and yet nobody saw the connection. The bakery still shone. Madame Janet still smiled. Behind her smile, however, she was feeding. Every night, she opened a black pot in her room, filled with pieces of people's hair, nails, and even crumbs from her own cakes. She chanted words that wrapped around the whole town like a snake. The more they ate, the more she grew strong. Her skin glowed, her rings shone brighter, and her voice carried a power that bent people's will. But Fola and Ada continued to watch. They noticed that Madame Janet's bakery never produced smoke in the day, though the ovens were hot. They saw her cats lick the ground outside the bakery, then hiss and run away. One night, Fola followed her, sneaking in the shadows like a mouse. He saw her pour liquid into her batter from a small black calabash. The smell made him choke. It was bitter like rotten eggs mixed with blood. He ran back home shaking, whispering to Ada, "It is true. She is feeding us poison." Ada's eyes filled with tears. "But who will believe us? Everyone loves her cakes." And that was the truth. The more the children tried to warn their friends, the more people laughed at them. "You are only children. You dream too much. Do not speak against Madame Janet," the elders said. And Madame Janet herself would laugh softly, patting Chike's head when she saw him, as if she knew he was watching. "Eat more cake, little one," she whispered one day, pressing a slice into his palm. He dropped it in fear, but she only smiled wider. Then the real horror began. At the next cockfight in the town square, Madame Janet came again with her tray of cakes. The roosters clashed, the men shouted, the dust rose. But this time after eating, people began to argue fiercely. One man accused another of cheating in the bets. The fight of the roosters turned into a fight of men. Blows landed, blood spilled, and women screamed. Children cried as their fathers threw punches like enemies. And in the middle of the chaos, Madame Janet stood, watching with her calm smile, her eyes glowing faintly red. From that day, Oluma was no longer the same. Market women stopped trusting each other. When Mama Nkechi's Akara refused to sell, she accused Ijeoma of witchcraft. Ijeoma cried and pointed fingers at another. Fights broke out in the market, insults filled the air, and business collapsed. Yet Madame Janet's bakery always had a line of customers. Her cakes are the only thing that bring joy, they said. But in truth, her cakes were the very cause of their sorrow. One night, Fola decided they could not stay silent. He and Ada crept out of their house and went to the edge of the forest. There was an old shrine there, broken and covered in weeds. The elders once told stories of a spirit that guarded the town long ago, but nobody prayed there anymore. Fola knelt before the shrine and whispered, "Please, whoever hears me, protect us. This woman is killing us. We are only children, but we cannot fight her alone." The wind blew and the trees shook. Ada held her brother's hand tightly. They felt a presence, cold yet strong. A voice whispered in their ears, "Watch her closely. The truth will come out. But beware, not all who smile are friends." That night when they returned, they saw something that chilled their blood. Madame Janet was not alone in her bakery. Through the window they saw another figure, a man from the town, a respected elder, bowing before her. He took a piece of cake from her hand, his lips trembling. "Do not fail me," he said. "Keep my power strong." Fola's eyes widened. "She has helpers. Someone we trust is working with her." Ada's tears rolled. "Then who can we believe?" The bitter taste of fear was now in their mouths, and they knew the town was walking deeper into darkness. Fola clenched his fists. "She is not alone. Her poison runs deeper than cakes. Even our leaders are eating from her hand." Ada trembled. "If the elders are blind, then who will believe us? We are only children." Still they refused to give up. The next market day, Fola gathered his courage. He stood in the middle of the square and shouted, "Stop eating Madame Janet's cakes. They are cursed. She is poisoning us." His voice cracked but carried. People turned shocked. Women gasped, men frowned. Madame Janet walked out of her bakery, her tray of cakes balanced neatly, her face calm. "Fola, my sweet boy," she said with a soft laugh. "Have my cakes ever harmed you? Look at me. Do I look like a witch?" The crowd murmured. They shook their heads. "She is kind," they said. "She gives our children free slices." But just then, Ife's mother appeared, carrying her weak child in her arms. The girl was thin, her eyes pale, her breath shallow. "Since she ate your pie, she has not been well," the mother cried, pointing at Madame Janet. The crowd gasped. For the first time, doubt flickered. Madame Janet's smile did not fade. Instead, she lifted her hand and placed it on her chest. "People fall sick every day. It is the will of the gods, not the fault of a poor baker." Her voice was gentle, yet her eyes locked on Fola with fire. That night, Fola dreamt again. He saw Madame Janet stirring her bowl, but this time he also saw Elder Namdi beside her, whispering words that tied ropes around the town like chains. He woke with sweat, and Ada beside him whispered, "We cannot stop them alone. We must find a way to break the spell." The next day, they returned to the old shrine in the forest. Kneeling before the broken stones, Fola prayed, "Please give us a sign. Show us how to end this." The wind blew again, but this time it carried words. "Truth is the fire that burns lies. Show them the truth, and the spell will break." The children knew what they had to do. That evening, they hid near Madame Janet's bakery, waiting. At midnight, she came out with Elder Namdi. Together they carried bowls filled with cake batter and black powder. They walked into the forest, chanting. The children followed, silent like shadows. They reached a clearing where Madame Janet poured her urine into the bowl, stirring with a wooden spoon, her eyes glowing. Elder Namdi threw pieces of people's hair and nails into the fire. They chanted together, "Eat and obey, eat and forget, eat and fight." Ada gasped too loud. Madame Janet's head snapped up. "Who is there?" she hissed, her voice sharp like knives. Fola grabbed his sister's hand and pulled her out. They ran, branches scratching their faces, their feet bleeding, but Madame Janet's laughter followed them. "Run, little rats. You cannot escape the truth. Nobody will believe you." The next morning they told the town what they had seen. But as Madame Janet predicted, many did not believe. Elder Namdi stood tall, shaking his head. They are children. They dream foolish dreams. Do not listen. People turned their backs. Fola and Ada wept. They felt helpless. The town was blind, the spell too strong. But fate moved differently. That very night, lightning struck Madame Janet's bakery. Flames rose high, devouring the walls. People ran with buckets of water, but the fire roared like a beast. And in the middle of the flames, Madame Janet stood, her smile gone, her face twisted, her apron burning. She screamed words that shook the ground. "If I cannot have you, I will destroy you all." Her shadow rose, tall and black, spreading across the sky. People screamed, dropping their buckets. The fire leaped into their homes. Panic filled the town. But then Fola, remembering the words of the shrine, shouted, "Look! Look at her! Look at what she truly is." And in that moment the people saw. They saw the black calabash spilling its poison. They saw her shadow with horns. They saw Elder Namdi's face pale with guilt as he fell to his knees. The spell broke. With a final scream, Madame Janet vanished into the flames. When the fire died, nothing of her bakery remained. Only ashes. The town was free but broken. Families wept over their sick. Trust had been destroyed. Friends who had once loved each other now kept distance. The laughter of Oluma would never be the same. Madame Janet was gone, but her poison had left scars. Fola and Ada stood in the ruins, holding hands. They were only children, but they had faced darkness. Ada whispered, "We saved the town, but we could not save their hearts." Fola nodded. "This is the price of blind trust. Sweet things are not always good. Smiles can hide poison. Do not trust blindly. Not all sweet smiles are true. Some kindness hides poison. Evil grows when people stay silent." Fola and Ada spoke when others were afraid, and their courage broke the spell. Greed blinds people. The town's love for sweet cakes made them ignore the warning signs. Truth is stronger than lies. Once the truth was revealed, the spell broke. Be watchful. Sometimes children see what adults ignore. Innocence can reveal hidden darkness. If you have not subscribed to my channel, you might not hear my voice again. But if you are, then you are growing every day. Check my page for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.